This video is sponsored by Surfshark. There are dozens of videos on YouTube about how terrible Japan's geography is, and the facts presented aren't wrong. Japan certainly has some geographic challenges. Some of its features have even resulted in some pretty terrible tragedies. However, I don't think these videos provide a fair picture of Japan's geography. I don't mean to criticize too harshly. These are usually great videos, and I'm a fan of many of these channels. But I do think that Japan's geographical benefits are understated. I'm not an environmental determinist, but I don't think you have a population of over 120 million people, become such a powerful adversary in so many wars, and have such a successful economy with geography that sucks. This is obviously more complicated than geography, but this is a geography channel, and I think its geography has, at a minimum, facilitated the country's success, however you define it. We'll start with its mountains. Sure, mountains aren't ideal for farmland. Only about 12% of Japan's land is arable, but it just slips by in the top 50 countries by the amount of arable land, with about 44,000 square kilometers. Not great, but certainly not terrible. Japan was actually food self-sufficient in the 1970s, when its population was just over 100 million. Japan appears to have reached its carrying capacity in more recent times, but its population is over 120 million people because it had enough arable land to support a large population to begin with. At least a small fraction of this issue is that Japan's farming isn't perfectly efficient. Japan isn't using every inch of farmland, mostly due to a shortage of agricultural workers, and young people with the desire, skills, and cash to purchase a farm. A high jobs to applicants ratio has affected most sectors in Japan's economy, but the agricultural sector more so than others. It's also a Japanese law that all farmland must be worked directly by whoever owns it, and 90% of agricultural workers are the owners themselves. I'm not an expert on this, and the debate seems to still be out on if corporate or small family farms are more efficient. But I think it's a logical assumption that family farms would be less likely to be able to afford new technologies that would improve efficiency. Japan's steep and rugged terrain have also provided some serious benefits though. But first, I want to share with you today's sponsor, Surfshark VPN, a virtual private network which keeps your online identity safe by encrypting all of the information sent between your device and the internet. This keeps your personal data protected from big companies or cyber criminals. Also, a VPN swaps the real location of your device with a new one, also known as changing your IP address. This way, you can virtually travel to any country around the globe. But if you're actually traveling, you may not be able to access your favorite shows or even the streaming platform themselves. Netflix, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus all have geo restrictions due to licensing rights. By using Surfshark VPN, you can bypass geo restrictions and access your favorite content from across the world. You could also use it to bypass website restrictions in that country. If you use my code GeoGeek, you'll get 3 extra months for free. And Surfshark offers a 30-day money-back guarantee, so there's no risk to try it out. If you'd like to check them out, I've left a link in the description below. Now back to those mountains. That same steep and rugged terrain that's difficult to farm is perfect for building ports. Japan's long, rocky coastline provides numerous locations with natural shelter from sea waves, a deep depth, and protection from storms. Japan has hundreds of ports all the way around the country. These ports have, of course, facilitated trade up and down Japan's own coastline and with other countries. Let's compare that to African countries with a smooth coastline, such as Namibia. Only 2 ports. Maybe that was an extreme example. But what about Angola? More than Namibia, but you get the picture. It's easier to build artificial harbors than it used to be, but it can still be pretty costly, and you're less likely to have the cash to build an artificial harbor and port, or have a use for one, when it's difficult to trade internationally on a large scale in the first place. Japan also has an advantage when it comes to international trade because of its location. It's basically a gateway between North America and Asia, at least when they desire. There was a 265-year period where they chose to be relatively isolated, but this policy of limited contact with other nations was only as enforceable as it was because it's an island nation. These ports are also great for shipbuilding. At its peak in the 1980s, Japan held over 50% of the global market, and Japan continues to be in the top 3. When it comes to military ships, heading into World War II, the Japanese Navy was the 3rd largest in the world, and arguably the most modern. This is Kure, a port city in the region of Satochi. This was one of the 4 main ports owned and operated by the Imperial Japanese Navy during World War II. The island of Shikoku shields the port from tropical storms. This leads me to the next topic, natural disasters. I'm going to assume you already know about Japan's earthquakes, tsunamis, cyclones, and volcanoes, and how devastating some of those events have been. But this was, in a way, the trade-off for the terrain that gave it natural harbors. And back to agriculture for a few seconds, Japan has extremely fertile soil due to its volcanic activity. And this is more of a modern benefit and probably minor, but Japan's volcanoes do bring in tourists. Hundreds of thousands of people climb Mount Fuji annually, around 25% of whom are foreigners. The country has benefited from cyclones before as well. In the 13th century, the Mongols twice attempted to invade Japan. The second was the 2nd largest naval invasion in history. Only the Allied invasion at Normandy in World War II tops it. Japan put up a pretty solid defense, but cyclones are what ensured victory. This was the largest empire by land area in world history, and they sent as many as 30,000 and 140,000 warriors, most of which were way more experienced. And Japan was its eastern limit, largely due to its geography. These 2 events are actually the first known uses of the word kamikaze, meaning divine wind. The Mongols' defeat highlights another geographic advantage. Japan is surrounded by ocean, with an open ocean for thousands of miles to its east. It's made it near impossible to invade. In over 2,000 years of history, Japan's mainland has only been successfully invaded once, in World War II by the United States, and it took 2 nuclear bombs to do it. This stability has allowed businesses to survive generations. Of the 5,586 companies older than 200 years, 56% are in Japan, and a survey conducted in 2009 counted more than 21,000 companies older than 100 years. Invasions aren't typically good for the longevity of businesses, and Japan's relatively limited contact and influence from the outside world may have allowed its distinctive culture, valuing loyalty, tradition, and continuity, to form and last all these years. And Japan's location being far enough out to sea and made up of numerous islands spread out across the Pacific Ocean has given Japan the 8th largest exclusive economic zone, despite only being the 62nd largest country by land area. This gives Japan quite a bit of area to fish. In fact, Japan led the world in fish production back in the 1980s, but that number has since declined, primarily from overfishing. However, they are still in the top 10. There is also a lot of potential for seabed mining in the future, which can make up for much of Japan's lack of mineral resources. It's often said that Japan has no natural resources. They usually mean specifically mineral or energy resources, because Japan generally has plenty of fresh water. Japan has twice the precipitation of the global average, but a drought occurs about every 10 years. I think the context of these resources matter. Oil, coal, and natural gas weren't really needed before the industrial era, and at some point, they might not again. Japan is starting to use more renewable energies, and upping its nuclear power usage after shutting down its plants in 2011 following the Fukushima nuclear disaster that was caused by a tsunami. Japan's lack of resources and natural disasters are definitely challenges, but I don't think we'd be talking about these challenges so much if Japan wasn't so successful to begin with. There are plenty of countries I think have fewer geographic benefits, but we aren't talking about how bad their geography is because of their lack of success and global influence, which can at least partially be attributed to their geography. So what do you think? Does Japan's geographic benefits outweigh its challenges? Am I wrong and they hold little weight, and Japan succeeded despite of the overwhelmingly bad geography? Or if you do agree that geography has played a role in Japan's success, how much should really be attributed to it? Let me know your thoughts on this topic in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button and subscribe for more geography videos. Thank you all for watching. And don't forget to check out Surfshark using the link in the description below.